This is a long one, but it's a good one. I'm joined by Matt Zirnsak from the Push, who is the definition of a redneck nerd. And I enjoy these guys incredibly because they think about things way deeper than I've ever thought about them. And they make me think about things in a way that I've never thought about them. We talk about a lot of things, not only pertaining to traditional archery. So before you tune out and just say, well, I'm not a traditional archer, there's nothing here for me. We talk about building better archery mechanics with a compound or a recurve, how to properly set up a shot, how to get in alignment, all of those types of things. We talk about making the transitions from a compound to a recurve. So if you've ever even thought about that or entertained that idea, here's a really good place to start. We talk in depth about tuning. We talk about how to tune your bows. We talk about vanes versus feathers and how to fletch your arrows to get the best tune. We talk about a tuning window. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I would highly encourage you to stay tuned in, because there is a tuning window on your bow. And when we fall right in the middle of that, you are going to have a much better setup. And Matt talks about how to find all of that. We talk about different resources that are going to help you become a better archer. And we talk about, if you've never, ever even thought about it, you've never looked at a bow, you've never picked up a bow, how do you start? How do you build good mechanics? How do you build a good shot? We talk about all that, and rewriting your shot mechanics. You were taught bad mechanics as a kid. You were taught these things, and now you're really trying to rewrite that and build a good shot and have good mechanics. We talk about all of it with recurves and compounds. It is an incredibly informative episode. I learned things about my shot. I learned things about my tune. I learned things about my arrows. Guys, stay tuned in right here. We're going to teach you something about building a better shot. This episode is brought to you by my good friends at Blocker Outdoors. As we get ready for hunting season, I admire companies that can give you really good products that you don't have to go refinance your home for. Blocker Outdoors gives you phenomenal hunting gear. It performs. It's technical. They have really good technical pieces. And you don't have to worry about being afraid to show your wife the receipt when you get home. It's really good gear, and you don't have to spend a ton of money on it. You can turkey hunt in it. You can spend days in the backcountry chasing elk in it. You can whitetail hunt in it. They make something for all the different pursuits. They have all the different patterns. They have all the different clothing pieces that you need to build a really good kit. And again, it's affordable, which is important to me, because I would rather spend money on going on more cool hunts than a whole bunch of cool gear and then not be able to afford to even go on hunts to use that gear. Guys, go check out Blocker Outdoors as you get ready for this season. I promise you, you'll be impressed, and you won't be scared of the price tag either. Let's jump in with Mr. Matt Zirnsak and talk about building better archery mechanics.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
Let me share a little bit about why I am so passionate about Mountain Ops. Yeah, they make incredible supplements to help me in my everyday life, on the mountain, in the gym. Great supplements. However, they also support my rights as a hunter. They're also Christian owned, which is something that I value a ton. And then third, through Operation Conquer Hunger, for every order that's placed on mountainops.com, they're providing a healthy meal to a family in need. Guys, if you use supplements at all, I would highly encourage you to look at not only the supplements that a company is pushing out, but also what that company represents. So guys, go check out mountainops.com, because it's a company that I can not only support because they make great products, but because they support the same things that I support. They support me as a hunter as well. So guys, go to mountainops.com, use code TYPICAL. That's going to save you a lot on your order, and you're still going to provide a meal for somebody who's in need of a healthy meal. Mountainops.com, discount code TYPICAL. Go check them out today. My favorite product by far is Ignite. I use it every single day. Before I podcast, before I sit down to work, before I go to the gym, I use it all the time. I use it on the mountain religiously. Ignite is my favorite product by far. However, they have a full line of supplements to help you conquer the mountain, conquer the day, conquer work, whatever you're looking to do. They've got something for you. MountainOps.com, discount code typical. All right, Matt, how are you, man?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Dude, just staying busy, getting ready for season. How about yourself?
Heck yeah. Same, dude. It's we went to ETAR back in the end of July, and that's like kind of like the springboard for hunting season, if you will. Like once that calendar turns over to August, it's like I start getting this internal feeling of stress and anxiety. Like I'm running out of time. Yeah. It's like right around the corner.
For sure. I don't ever get, I get that way with the first cool morning. I'm like, holy crap, dude. I'm like, wait, okay, yeah. It doesn't matter how prepared I am. Like, yeah, right. I could be as prepared as can be, but that first full morning, it's like, dude, it's here and I'm not ready. Like, it's just,
it's like hearing the Star Spangled Banner, like at a sports event, like right before you're about to play,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's getting real now. It's here.
Now, are you a big, 3D course shooter? Do you do tax and all that stuff too?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I wouldn't say I do a lot of tax, but I did a TAC event this year. I just set up as a vendor there for the quiver products and stuff. And it was a great event, but normally I set up at the Eastern Traditional Archery Rendezvous. That's one of the main events that I go to, but I'll do competitions as well, IBOs and things throughout the year.
Very cool. I don't like shooting targets. I don't know. I just want to kill stuff. I have an idea for a new t-shirt. It might be a little too like,
oh, okay.
It might be a little too gritty. I don't know. Like for a
little spicy.
But
what is it? Tell me.
I invited a buddy to come on a hunt. I'm like, dude, he's like, I've always wanted to kill bears. And I'm like, I've got an opening. You can come. And, told him the week, he's like, oh, I got to be at TAC that weekend. I'm like, you don't have to, like, you're missing a hunt to go kill,
right? To go kill
a foam. And so I just said, dude, you're one of those fruitcakes that like to shoot foam and not flesh. And I'm like, man, we need to put that on a t-shirt.
That sounds like a t-shirt.
Shoot flesh, not foam. But I don't know. It might be a little too gritty.
I look at it this way. I love bow hunting so much, and I shoot 3Ds, and I compete to put myself into high stress situations to be able to handle filling tags better. Yeah. So if I can't be out there hunting, I might as well be out there pretending to hunt. Now, so that's how I look at it.
And I mean, I've seen your backyard range as well. We're both very blessed, but I think that's part of the reason too. Like, I mean, I've got 13, 14 3D targets in the backyard. Sure. So like where some guys view that as like, oh man, I get to go shoot 3Ds. Like that's how I shoot in the backyard. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't give me that kind of, I don't know.
No, I'm with you. I agree with you because I'm starting right now. Like I just upgraded my range. I had a decent range to begin with. I would say about 10 targets, 13 targets or so. And then just recently I added another 10 and I doubled the size of the range and like cleared out a bunch of brush and everything. So my range is like pretty stellar right now. And I have a 3D shoot coming up this weekend and I'm kind of like,
I'd rather just stay home.
I'm not really excited because I'm shooting at every target that I want to, that I bought for myself. You know, I'm with you.
Now, and I think that's another thing. Like with recurves, you can only shoot so far. You know what I mean? And so, if you're shooting a compound, like, I want to go to a TAC so I can stretch it out further than I can in my backyard in the neighborhood. But, I don't have much desire to shoot over 40 yards my recurve anyways. So it's like, I can do that at home. And again, I love the community aspect of it. I love just getting and going, seeing friends and hanging out with people. Sure. I love the afterlife of just, going to a restaurant, everybody from TAC being there and you're just talking archery with everybody. Like I do love that part of it. But man, I will never give up a hunt to go shoot a target. Like that's not what I think. I
agree with that. Yeah. Here's a question I like to ask at the beginning of my podcast as I like get to know people. If you couldn't bow hunt, like let's say that over your entire lifetime, hunting becomes illegal in the United States and like there's no opportunities for bow hunting, would you still shoot your bow?
100%. Yeah.
You would?
1,000%.
Yeah. So you enjoy the archer aspect of the hobby as well.
yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I mean, I shoot probably average year. I shoot probably 100 arrows a day.
Okay, nice.
Like, and there's days, there's days where, it's 60 degrees out and it's a Saturday with football on. There's football in the shop. So I'm just shooting hundreds of arrows. And then, maybe I don't shoot any for a few days. But I mean, I love shooting my bow. And I've actually, on the topic of recurves, I tell people all the time, like they come over and they're shooting compounds and I'm like, just shoot it once. Like,
give it a try. Yep. Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, I don't care if you ever hunt with it or not. Like, this makes shooting in the backyard enjoyable again.
Sure.
This makes you enjoy shooting in the backyard again. And here's the reason why. I was talking, actually last week's episode was South Cox. And I was saying that with compound shooting, you can teach, or South brought up the idea that with compound shooting, I can teach a teenager to hit the target at 20 yards in about an hour. And they can be put in baseball sized groups in a 20-yard target in about an hour. And so there gets a point with a compound where you lose that euphoric high of like, I just hit the target. Like, holy crap.
Or I shot a good group.
Yeah.
Like the search for like a good 4-arrow, 5-arrow group is pretty easy. It's a short journey.
And so you lose that, like, oh my gosh, like I just hit the target. So you're either shooting good and you're satisfied, or you're shooting bad and you're mad at the world. You lose that just like joy of going out and shooting. And when you pick up a recurve, it's either you're shooting bad and you're like, well, yeah, that's what you get with this thing. Or you're shooting good and you're like, you're just on just this euphoric high of like,
do this.
I'm hitting the target. Like you get that sense of like being a kid again and going out and shooting for hours and trying to hit the hay bale. Like, you get that sense again. And so I tell people all the time, like, dude, I don't care if you never hunt with this thing ever. I don't care if you ever have plans of hunting or aspirations to hunt with it. Just get one to shoot in your backyard because it will make you enjoy archery. Like,
and I think it'll make you a better compound archer as well.
1,000%.
Like, the little hiccups and the little variations that you as the human is putting into this mechanical system are so much, like, there's so much protection and aids with a compound to just like not guarantee, but to really make the variations that you as the human are putting into the system are minimized. And once you start shooting a recurve or a traditional bow, you see how much variation that you as the archer are putting into the system. And I think you just appreciate everything on the compound side more. Like, just guys that jump back and forth just seem to always have the same report out after like getting into traditional archery. They're like, man, 100%. I became such a better compound archer after dabbling with traditional bows.
Yeah. And you come to the point where you realize like a bow is a bow. Like, the mechanics are the same. Like, yes, I'm drawing with my fingers instead of a release aid. I don't have a let off. Like, there are massive differences. I don't have a sight. I don't have a rest. There are massive differences in the equipment, but the mechanics of archery are the same. And dude, I'll never forget, like, my first lesson, there in Denver with Tom. Like, you walk away feeling a lot more confident with your recurve. And then months later you pick up your compound and you're like, whoa, like, this is different. Like, I'm more confident. I'm executing a shot better. I'm practicing back tension better.
Sure.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, when it comes to compound, I'm a trigger puncher. No shame in my game, dude. I'll punch the trigger and just shoot it. Which is funny because I pride myself in executing a good shot with a recurve, but
interesting.
It's like when you have a release, why not just punch the stinking trigger and get the arrow going that direction?
It's like they're punching.
Because, and again, it comes down to like, you can be so effective at 50 yards punching a trigger.
Sure.
Like, what, I don't know. I'm not trying to downplay. Anybody who can shoot a compound really, really well, I respect that as much. Especially long distance. I mean, if you're hitting, baseballs at 100 yards, like, that's incredibly impressive. I'm not taking anything from you. And again, if it was my aspirations to become that good with a compound, then I would certainly work on building a better shot execution. I just don't have those aspirations.
Sure.
I want to be able to shoot a pie plate at 60 and shoot animals with it. That's it. Mm-hmm. So, that's where I'm at on that. Anyways, when it comes to building shot mechanics, what brought you on this journey to really do what you do and
that's
build
a great
the
question.
shot mechanics?
Yeah. So you're almost asking like the origin story a little bit of where I started with this. So I never shot a compound. My buddies were all getting into archery and they were hanging out at the local club on Tuesday nights, back whenever we were in college. And I'm like, in the summertime, I wanted just to go hang out with my buddies, but I wasn't into archery. I was a small game hunter and a weekend warrior for rifle season for big game.
Yeah.
That's all I did. And so every time I was at the family farm, my buddies would have their compounds out. And this is like early 2000s. And they were still using like 1980s era Hoyts, shooting with their fingers, single pin fixed sights. And they never took care of these bows at all. And so every time I got exposed to archery, like shit was flying off their bows.
Yeah.
Like everything was getting derailed off the cams. Like it was just a disaster. I'm like, wow, this is archery. Like this seems really dangerous. And they were just shooting 20-year-old, 30-year-old equipment. So I told my fiance at the time, my now wife, that I was interested in getting into archery to go hang out with the boys during summertime on their summer league nights. And, but I'm like, but recurves are kind of cool looking. And that was it. That was what sent me down that path. And that following Christmas, I opened up my very first recurve and I worked my tail off. And there wasn't a ton of information out there. The barrier to the proper information was you would have to buy DVDs. You had to invest some money and like actually sit down and interface with these instructors through a DVD. And then aside from that, like the YouTube wasn't super big. There wasn't a lot of instructional content on YouTube. So I consumed every bit of information from like online forums. I bought every DVD I could find, read every book I can find. I was just a sponge. I was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So I practiced really hard from that December until the next hunting season. And then the next 2 years was just a comedy of errors. I missed 11 deer clean before I killed my 12th. And so I looked back at that experience and I'm just stubborn. Right. And I'm sure if I was wounding these animals and like gut shooting them and not finding them after 3 or 4, I would have just hung the bow up. But just luckily the way I was missing high on everything. I was just shooting right over the back in the heat of the moment. I just was like blacking out and shooting high. And I knew there had to be a better way to shoot these weapons. There had to be. And there had to be a better way to like introduce people to the sport so they can avoid having my experience, because retention is the hardest thing in traditional archery. Everybody has a grandpa that has an old recurve hanging above the fireplace or laying in the corner closet or something. And every time I talk to a compound archer, they're always saying like, maybe if I shoot a few deer and I fill my buck tag early, I would love to take this thing out and shoot a doe with it. Like that is super common. Yeah. And they will practice with it all through the summertime. And once hunting season comes, it's like, it's too scary to take it in the woods because they're not seeing the results at the target on their training sessions, because there's the instructional process of taking somebody from complete beginner to sufficiency just takes so long. The learning curve is so steep. So that was really the nexus of the push. Was I spent the next, 6 or 7 years, like really getting my shit together in the woods. I started being successful. I started coming up with a program. And then once I was starting to be successful, all my buddies were like, oh dude, this is possible. Like you're really good at this. This is awesome. Take me under your wing. So about the 20th person I took under my wing, I had a pretty good process for taking somebody from complete beginner to being pretty proficient really quickly. And the way I came up with this program was I got into competition archery. I got into barebow, competitive archery, IBO, 3D shooting. And so I spent a lot of years rubbing elbows with quite literally the best single string non-sighted shooters in the world. And I was seeing what they could do with this equipment. I was seeing the potential of single string non-sighted bows. And I'm like, this is incredible to see what these guys are doing. I mean, they're shooting IBO courses at the world level is 33 yards and in, and these guys are shooting like on a 10 target quarter of the 40 targets, like they're shooting 93s up to 100 points, like almost never missing the 10 ring, which is crazy. Demmer just last weekend at the IBO Worlds, he shot on the final course, he shot a 201. So he shot up with a recurve on a very hard world level competition course out to 33 yards and in. So I was seeing these guys and I was like, I was just a sponge. I was constantly asking them questions. And then what I was doing is I started taking everything I was learning from these guys and porting it over into my hunting game. And so I was using advanced aiming techniques. I was modifying my equipment to be closer to my bear bows that I was competing with through the summertime. And my success rates and my confidence just like went through the roof. And about the 20th person I brought under my wing was Tim Nebel, and he was really good at video work, and I had the instructional side behind us. So we just threw out a 2-hour long soup to nuts video on his personal YouTube channel. That's all we did.
That's
and
cool.
It kind of blew up, and that's kind of where this brand started, was expediting the traditional archery learning curve.
Now, what
what
year was that?
2016.
So that was really, I mean, you were part of that big making Recurve cool again. I mean, there really was that wave. You know what I mean?
There was timing with it. It was really strange because, we had at the time, from a content standpoint, we had Jason Samkowiak, who's like the OG of traditional archery content. He's had a podcast out there for years. And then there wasn't really many more that had podcasts or any YouTube content out there. And especially from the instructional side, like really focusing in on the mechanics and the mental execution of like, how do we get our arrows to hit our marks with these, seemingly simple weapons. And so that's where we just started one video that went kind of semi-viral as much as it can be in the traditional archery community. I mean, almost 10 years later, it's almost at 2 million views, which is mind blowing to me that many people have watched, a 2-hour long video on traditional archery, which is pretty cool.
Right.
But one video turned into 7, we just kept pumping out videos. And in 2017, we launched the podcast. And the podcast was kind of like our lab, if you will. This was like an opportunity for us to just be bold and reach out to all the greats. And just start asking them, we wanted to hear hunting stories. We wanted to hear cool origin stories. But the real intent that we really focused on that kind of differentiated our show was that near the second half of the podcast, we're all about how do you do what you do under pressure? Like, I want to dig into the weeds on like how you're setting up your equipment. What are you saying to yourself as you're executing a shot on a live animal? Like, how are you doing this? And that was just like, our MO is we just wanted to get into the brains of these subject matter experts and understand how.
That's cool, man. I have hundreds of questions. Well, before I move on, if you were to pick your all-star top 3, now I have to word this differently because the answer could be massively different. Okay. Just absolute killers. Like, again, I could care less if you could shoot a target really, really well if you can't kill something. Now, I shouldn't say that because, again, I admire the guys who stand on an Olympic stage and shoot. I'm not saying anything. I'm not minimizing what they do. However, I'm a bow hunter. That's what I do.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Top 3 killers. Like, they just have that killer instinct, and they just, if they see an animal, it's going to die. Who would you say the top 3 you've met are?
Geez, oh man. I mean, there's so many of them. You have, the list is so long. I really couldn't rank them. I mean, you have guys like Denny Sturgis, Randy Cooling. You have Kurt Cabrera, Greg Krause, Logan Glassburn. I mean, all the Just Hunting boys, George Johnson and Glenn Johnson. I mean, you just name them. So we actually just last fall, we launched a video called Bow Hunters of Etar. And this is basically a collection of, I think, 13 of the people that you're talking about, that you're asking about. Like, these guys were just like straight up killers. And we wanted to put a video out there. I think it's almost 2 hours long as well. And we wanted to put a video out there about like how they do what they do, what their equipment is. And anybody on that list, I could just like rattle off. They would be in so many people's top 3. But yeah, these dudes are absolute killers.
So what about the killers who they have that instinct? I mean, if they see an animal, it's going to die. Like, it's that type of, and for those of you that don't know, like, there are just men out there and like, they just have this second level of just, I mean, if they even know there's an animal on this mountain, they're going to find a way to kill it.
Yeah, right.
However, there is a list of those guys, and I'm not gonna start naming any names, but that just have terrible shot execution. And they'll tell you they do. I'm not saying
for sure.
I'm not saying that I'm talking bad about them, but like, your guys who are like old school, pull back and let it rip. They touch their cheekbone and just let go of the string.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, what do you say? Like,
this is great. I kind of know where you're going with this. So I am kind of now take the whole like absolute straight killer. If there's an animal on the mountain, like take that off of what I'm about to say, because that's not what I'm describing myself, and I'm not tooting my own horn.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to affirm what you're saying. The difference between how you execute a shot on the line or in your backyard versus a live animal, there are absolute differences in that environment, in that stressful situation, for sure. These are not the same thing. And so I'm a big competitor, and I compete at the Lancaster Classic. I regularly put myself into situations where the stress is high. I actually launched this fun thing on our YouTube channel where I made up these keychains. I'll pull one of these out because it's kind of funny. But in the never-ending search for high-pressure situations, I'm always trying to be a better bow hunter. And so you can't replicate super shaky hands, elevated heart rate, irregular breathing. You can't just put yourself into that state of mind and that state of your body. And so I always try to find ways to replicate that as much as possible. So I made these keychains up, and they say, "I beat Zirnsak, he sucks." Right. And so I made 100 of these or 50 of these or whatever. And so now what I'm doing is these stay in my quiver. So anytime I'm at a public shoot, anybody can walk up to me and challenge me for a keychain in a shoot off. We determine what the shoot off is going to be, like 4 arrows at these 4 3D targets or whatever. But the caveat is I have to have my cameras with me, and no matter what happens, it goes live on YouTube. So it's just going to get put out there for all the world to see. And as soon as somebody walks up and like, "Hey, Zirnsak, you got any of those keychains?" Dude, my heart rate spikes. I start getting shaky, and I'm replicating what I'm feeling in the woods by regularly putting myself into those. So that was a big aside, right? So I'm getting better at making my hunting shot closer to my competitive shot, because my competitive shot is going to be more accurate. The way I get through my trigger, the way I execute my shot, my mental execution of that shot process. I'm not flashing out early. I'm not triggering my shot off my sight picture. I'm trying to do that in the woods. However, last year I killed 8 deer, and I only got through my shot process on 2 of them. But hunting is binary, right? Dead is dead. So in a hunting situation, like we could be counting 11 rings and 10 rings and whatever, but in a hunting situation with that animal quartering away, you're going to be shooting 8s in the 8 ring back. So you can come across those vitals in a different way than what the scoring rings show. So there is this like killer instinct of like, is the end goal to execute a perfectly executed shot and whatever happens downrange happens? Or is the goal put that animal on the ground?
Yeah.
And so I walk this weird line of like my brand and the stuff we talk about on the show is the goal is to try to get everybody out there, their execution under pressure as close to their execution in the backyard as possible. Let's bring those shot processes together and get us there. And the only way to do that is getting more reps in this higher state of stress. But I'm one of those people that you say like, hunting is more binary to me. Like I do have a goal to execute my shot to get through my entire process. But if it's the difference, like if that deer is looking really spooky and I don't think I have a lot of time and I don't have that extra 1.5 seconds to get through my trigger and actually run through my expansion, and it's kind of like a now you're dead, like a now moment, I'm going to do that. Like killing that animal and tagging that animal is the goal.
Dude, I'm so glad you say that. Like, so glad you say that, because my first year, like I went on a killing spree. Like if it got within shot distance, it was dead. Like I never missed. And then year 2 was decent. Year 3 was horrible. And it was exactly why what you just said. Like I missed 2 different animals because I was trying to just execute this perfect shot.
Yep.
And, or I'd be halfway through my back tension, and then the deer would like take a big step, and I'm like, oh, like just, it was just a mess.
Yeah, sure.
But I kept telling myself like, well, this is how you shoot. Like, this is what you do. And so I even remember during that time, like putting on a couple podcasts, like, I don't even remember who all at the time. I know Tom was one of them. But just talking about like, how do you execute back tension in the heat of the moment. Like, because I've oftentimes said with a compound, like, I don't care how good of a shooter you are. If you're hunting, there are times you have to punch the trigger. Like if you can talk about all this Joel Turner crap you want, like, but when you're hunting, there's a time where you have to just punch the trigger and get it off. But however, like that didn't translate to me with a recurve. I'm like, no, you always have to just practice this perfect shot execution. And so I'm really glad you say that, because like there are times you can't do that. Like just shoot the animal and kill it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say this. I figured out the bad way how to add pressure to yourself when you're shooting. I went out to retrieve some arrows, and on my way back, I'm like, I'm going to shoot, on my way back. And so I'm shooting back towards the house, and I get to black buck A, and I'm like, all right. And I look behind it, and if you miss, you are shooting through the window of my house. And I'm like, huh. I'm like, well, this is a really good time to like put pressure on. So I do it anyways. I didn't miss, but I remember thinking like, I better not ever do that again. Like, that's a terrible idea. Nobody was home. Don't start sending me hate email. Nobody was home. Right. I was not going to shoot a kid. Nobody was home. But yeah, I was like, I probably shouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah. And so back to the binary, like kill or don't kill, right? And that being the goal. I think 90%, 95% of the hunting situations, you have way more time than what you think. Yeah. Right. You're just in a higher state of stress. This deer, you've watched this deer literally for 15 minutes within 50 yards, quartering to you, not offering you a shot. And literally it takes this deer 15 minutes to mosey on to finally open its front leg. And all of a sudden you think that you're running out of time. It's now or never. Meanwhile, you literally just watch this deer move 6 inches every minute for the last 15 minutes. Right. So it's like, I think we always have more time. And the end goal, I have mad respect for guys like Joel that put the shooting a shot under control ahead of, that's more important to him than the kill itself. And I have mad respect for that. I'm not there yet. However, I am always trying to get through my shot. That is the end goal. I just know if I don't have that end goal, it goes really badly. If I just have this deer coming in and I go into complete autopilot and complete kill mode, I don't trust my subconscious to do the process right. It's always going to try to be efficient. It's always going to short circuit the process. If I can get myself 75, 80% through that shot process, I'm anchored, I'm aimed, I've left the aim, and I'm transitioning into my back tension, and I'm just trying to expand, waiting for my trigger. After that, if that shot flashes out a little early, it's always going to be good. But if I go into that situation just staring at this animal and going like, when can I get the shot? When can I get the shot? Oh, right now. And that's all I'm thinking about. Like, now's the moment. I am going to, it's more times than not, it's worse than if I would actually have the goal of trying to get through that. So like, the same thing with compound. It's like, if you're running a trigger or you're running a thumb button or whatever you're hunting with, and you're aiming and you're just like in this, oh God, when's the shot? And you get back and then you're just slamming that trigger the minute you have it, versus like at least trying to start into that process of rolling that. Once you start in that process, as long as you're into that process, into that window, it's always going to be better. Now,
do you shoot any compounds like still to this day? None at all?
Nope.
You're just
no, but I spend so much time around it, like working with Joel so much and going to these TAC events. And a lot of my buddies still shoot compounds. Like I'm a firm believer, like understanding the mechanics and like the shot, the mental side of archery. You can learn a ton for mental execution for traditional bows from watching elite level compounders. So like when I'm in my shooting spots in the wintertime, I love always saddling up to these compound unaided guys that are just, shooting 300 rounds regularly, 328 X's. And I just watch them rolling these hinges and rolling or like super slowly pushing through these buttons, because they're going through the same mental battle I am. Yeah. It's just mine is bigger motor program, bigger movements, to where I'm still aiming. I'm setting an aim. I'm relying on my biomechanics. You're doing the same thing with the compound, looking through that peep, watching that pin float. And then the mental battle is, get through this until it breaks as a surprise.
All right.
And
So
it's
maybe
the same thing with trad bows.
Maybe you can help me here then. Because I got into an argument the other day with somebody. And you've probably heard Joel address this at some point. I looked, like I did a quick, Google search. I couldn't find Joel like directly addressing this, but I got into the argument with somebody and I said, if I start to slowly apply pressure with my thumb, I'm not punching the trigger. I'm not right when the pin gets on the target, I punch the trigger. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about holding the target. The back pressure is applied, but then this is still the firing mechanism. Okay. And I still just apply pressure slowly with my thumb until the shot breaks. Would that still not be a well-executed shot? Would that still not be, that still can't be defined as punching the trigger because I didn't punch the trigger?
No, absolutely not. No, that is apt. So Joel actually, Joel's of the opinion, like pulling against compounds, like that's no longer a big thing, right? At the elite level, these guys that are doing what Bodie's doing and doing that, like these insane 28 round head-to-head single arrow shoot-offs where they're going 28 rounds deep, hitting the X's inside out X. Like it's nuts, the level of compound shooting. Yeah. But his thing is like minimizing the amount of input into the system. So you can't get any more minimal than reducing all of the shot input to a single digit manipulation. Like that is going to be the least amount of input into the system. And as long as you're controlling that and you're letting that thumb just slowly increase pressure, and your feedback loop is the feeling of increased pressure against this thumb pad until the shot breaks as a surprise, that is perfectly executed. Like that's going to be better than massive movements and massive variations being put into the system by like pulling against a tension activated release.
So to my friend that I was arguing with, never mind, I can't say that.
So was he arguing that rolling the release and pushing the thumb button into the thumb versus pushing the thumb into the button, like just the difference between those, one's punching the trigger and one's not?
My argument was that if I fire it with my thumb, it's not punching the like just because I'm using my thumb. Now, don't get me wrong.
It's not.
If it floats on the target and you immediately punch your thumb, that's punching the trigger.
Sure.
But I was saying like, just because this is the activation of the release, me moving my thumb does not mean I'm punching the trigger.
No, absolutely not.
Does not mean I'm executing a bad shot.
It's no different. The analogy of shooting a rifle.
Yeah.
Right? You can't shoot a rifle other than using your trigger finger, but you can punch the shit out of a rifle, or you can have it break as a surprise, but the activation movement is all the same.
So that my argument was that just because the activation movement is my thumb does not mean I'm punching the trigger. His argument was that you have to practice back tension to break your release or you're punching the trigger.
That's inaccurate.
I mean, he's an idiot, so I'm hoping he's listening to this.
Actually, the top level guys are no longer pulling.
Yeah.
The top level guys are completely static through the entire shot. The only thing that's adding variation or adding more tension in the system is their active release activation.
So how soon then do we start learning this, and how soon do you stop having to go to a total archery challenge where people incredibly over exaggerate the breaking of their shot and, act like they're completely just falling back after they shoot? Like, when does that go away, you think?
I don't know. But I mean,
that's stupid.
But you can, it all depends on like, how are you loaded up, right? You can load up against that back wall, right? And your static position is like, there is some tension. Like you're actually pulling against this bow into this equilibrium, but with a compound, like let's say the holding weight is 15 pounds, you can like hold 15 pounds like this, or you can hold 15 pounds like this. Like there's a difference in muscle tension of holding that. But I think the key element here is when you're back, whether you're holding it with some muscle tension in this equilibrium state or none at all, the goal here is not increasing that muscle tension to break the release. That's adding a ton of variation and a ton of tension into the system. So you can be back here at equilibrium with some level of tension, not increasing it, and then run your thumb button. And then when it breaks, it's going to do this because your equilibrium state, it's like playing tug of war and someone lets go of the rope. you're going to go in this direction, even if you are holding 15 pounds. So I don't think looking at the follow through isn't really the key indicator of like how they're running their release and how they're running their shot. It's more of are they increasing the tension in their holding to pop the release, or are they just keeping all the manipulation here in their release hand? And that's the key.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm not saying the follow through is the indication of how they broke the shot. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that there are a lot of guys out there that incredibly over exaggerate their follow through just because I think that's what looks cool on the range.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot in recurves as well. Like you'll see differences in super dynamic fast breaks. Like you see more of like an Olympic archery, like a power shot, versus like a classic. I mean, some of the best bare bow archers in the world. It's called the bare bow follow through. It's just it's like literally when it breaks, it's a slow back rather than like a fast back. And then you have like the static release guys that are in these. This is more of a puncher, right? In recurve,
right. So what? Walk me through kind of your setup of a shot. So, not your setup actually. Let's give high level 101 setup of a shot. So if you were just to try to give somebody these steps, like, hey. You bought one from Walmart. You picked a Samick Sage up. You just want to learn how to shoot this thing. And
this is a compound convert.
Yeah. Let's look at that first.
Perfect. Yeah.
How do you get on target? Like what are the first steps you're going to give somebody to instruct them in shooting this thing?
Perfect. So what I like to do is I always just use the compound, the weapon that they are familiar with, to compare and contrast how we're going to shoot these single string bows. Okay. So I look at the compound and say, okay, this compound is a mechanical system bound by the laws of physics. My camera's turning on here. So it's a simple mechanical system bound by the laws of physics, just like a recurve is, but there are different aids in a compound that help. So number one is I always look at the cams, because that's the biggest differentiator between a recurve and a longbow. So what does a compound's cams do for the shooter in reducing variation in the system? It standardizes the draw length. Mm-hmm. So now the bow is putting the same amount of energy into the arrow every single time. And it's a lighter holding weight. It cams over and you're holding less weight. So now we have to figure out something on a recurve or a longbow when you're approaching how to shoot these weapons. How can we best get ourselves to replicate or get as close as possible to the benefits of what cams do, since we don't have them? And so we, as the shooter, are going to become the cams. So we need to be able to brace and hold that weight well. So that's going to be the weight that you decide to start with, which I always recommend people start in the low 40 pound range, high 30 pound range as their first bow, as they're converting over. Even if they are an 80, 85 pound compound guy, absolutely, just go slow. You can buy different bows here that you swap different limbs, these takedown bows you see behind me. So the first thing is lightweight, be able to manage and manhandle that weight. You shouldn't be like really struggling to even get it back to your face. You're going to be way overbowed. So that's one. Two is we are now biomechanically becoming the cams. So a lot of people, when we're looking at biomechanics, the very one big thought is they raise the bow up and they're going to draw their drawstring straight back to their anchor and they're going to shoot, right? So you can see what's happening if the only thing I'm focusing on is taking my bow from brace to my face. Look what's happening to my string side elbow. Mm-hmm. So as I'm like this, if I'm not in line, this bow is going to want to fold me over the entire time like this. Yeah. Okay. So this is just like right here, trying to come to full draw and shoot a shot like this is literally like shooting your compound as the cams are rolling over and they're like 5% away from finally flipping over. You're constantly going to be in the state of right around the edge and it's wanting to fold you over. So we need to become the cam and get our string side elbow back behind the string path, or at least even with it. And there's a lot of biomechanics, like we can dive in super deep on biomechanics on how to get there. And I don't really care how you get there. You could do a cartwheel every single time you shoot your bow, but at the very end of your cartwheel, you're ending up in a perfect alignment, in a perfect holding position. I don't care how you get there. There are good best practices that you can do to help you get there in a more repeatable way and learn that movement. But it's really, really important that when you're looking at your bow hand to your bow shoulder, from your bow shoulder to your string shoulder, and from your string shoulder to your string elbow, that needs to be a straight line.
Yeah.
Okay. Angling in towards the bow. And then you have the straight line from the arrow through your string fingers, through your string side forearm to that elbow. It needs to be another straight line.
And let me just say this. If you think like, oh, I've got that down, film yourself from above.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
like I just shoot like standing below my deck, put the phone up on the deck and just shoot filming straight down. And I remember the first time I did that, two things happened. I kid you not. That video was where I said, dude, my hair is way too thin. Got to cut that off. And then secondly, I swear
I learned a lot about myself that day.
It's still on my Instagram. Like every time somebody's like, when did you go bald? I go back to that video. And
go
I'm
back
like,
to that one.
Look at that. Like that's horrible. And so I've decided I needed to shave my head, and I decided I'm not near as in line as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a big difference in feeling like you're in line and then actually being in line. And that also made me, here's a bit of a, talking about the translation between a compound and a recurve. That also made me go, you know what? I bet my compound is about a half inch too short on draw length.
There you go.
And I remember actually pretty soon after this, I was talking with Tom, and he said, I think majority of people, not majority, I think a lot of people are about a half inch too short on their compounds.
Oh, I'm sure.
And because when you roll over that last half inch and everything settles in right there, all of a sudden you're like, dude, I could hold this for decades. Like this doesn't feel like I'm holding anything.
Yep.
Because you're now in a line and you're not crunched at all. It's not trying to pull.
Yeah, the bow's not trying to fold you over.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
And so I remember I was like, oh, I'm going to order half inch cams longer and see what happens. And I was like, dude, this is like mind blowing. I can hold on the target so much more steady. And,
oh yeah.
And I can't tell you how many people have been at my house now. And I'm like, why don't we take that out half an inch and see what happens? And you do. And they're like, dude, what just happened? Like, this is incredible. So yeah, I would, and even with a compound, like film yourself from above and see, like, is your elbow having to come in at all? Are you crunched at all? Or are you perfectly in a line?
Yeah. If you film from straight the back, it's the best position to view this is like Dylan's suggesting is doing from the above. But if you don't have that set up, just set your phone up and prop it up behind you and just look straight down the string, like try to get it to where the string is right down the middle of your limbs from behind. And you want to see this tip of your elbow in line with that string or slightly to the left of it as it would be framed in for a right-handed shooter from looking behind. For a left-handed shooter, it would be opposite. You'd want it in line or slightly right of the string.
Right.
But yeah, so what you're describing here is translating all of that tension through our skeletal system rather than muscle tension to hold that bow back. So proper alignment is replicating the cams because now all these forces are being transferred through bone on bone support. And then you can sit back there. You don't have muscle fatigue. You can hold longer. You can operate properly. Like once you find proper alignment and the proper holding position, there is absolutely a biomechanical and a mental like once you get there, it's just you even shooting a 50-pound recurve, you can get back there. And once you're in alignment, you're like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing. And it frees your mind up to actually focus on the things you want to focus on to execute your shot rather than like your subconscious just screaming at you, like, get me out of this uncomfortable position. Like you can't hold this back anymore. Like you don't need any of that in your shot. So that's why the holding position is super important. From a cam perspective, it replicates the cams rolling over and allowing you to easily hold that bow back and hold that bow weight back. But also the cams are also, remember we mentioned in the beginning, it's setting your draw length. It's keeping the amount of energy being translated into that arrow consistent because you can't pull it further back once you hit your back wall. So we need a back wall, right? We need something that is telling us that this is consistent. And so that's going to be our anchor point in relationship and in conjunction with our holding position. So a lot of people, what they do is they settle on an anchor point first. And so an anchor point is super important for us because it's your rear sight. So just like a compound, if you're looking through your peep sight, and you take the peep sight and you ghost it over to the right or over to the left, and you don't have it perfectly concentric with your sight housing, you're going to have left and right issues. And it's no different with a recurve. Our back sight is our anchor point. So we have to be really consistent about how we're setting up our anchor. But I think people talk about anchor points so much that it becomes the primary thing. So it's like, get back to anchor, get back to anchor. But what I'm about to demonstrate is you can get back to anchor. If I get to full draw, I'll come back from the camera here in a second. So this first thing I'm going to show you is proper holding position, proper anchor point, fully expanded, and all of the forces of the bow being pushed through my skeletal system. Looks like that, right? This is my anchor point. So I have a 3-point anchor. I'm putting my thumb knuckle back behind my jawbone here. I have my base of my index finger knuckle underneath my cheek, just like I'm resting it on a gun stock. And then I have an index finger in the corner of my mouth, which is actually my tab plate, touches this repeatable spot. So I have a 3-point anchor. So 3 points, lock down a plane, super consistent. There's no variability. If you have a 2-point anchor, you're going to still have a degree of freedom on an axis you can pivot on. So I always try to find a repeatable 3-point anchor. But here's the problem. Again, I'm falling into this trap. I'm talking about this awesome repeatable 3-point anchor, and people are going to just try to find a repeatable 3-point anchor, but it might not line up with their natural holding position. So everybody's forearms, everybody's humeruses, everybody's shoulder to shoulder width are all different in proportion to each other. Some people have really long forearms. So when they come to full draw and they actually cam their back over and they get into alignment, their forearms, their fingers end up way up here in the front of their face because their forearms are real long. Some people's forearms are real short, and it's going to end them up way back here when they're in proper alignment and proper holding position. This guy that I'm demonstrating right now with short forearms that's in a proper alignment, this is going to be his lowest stress holding position here. But the problem is we talk about, you got to have an anchor point, use the finger in the corner of your mouth. How is he going to use the finger in the corner of his mouth?
Right.
The only way to get there is to come out of alignment. So
that's good.
So he's deciding on an anchor point first and sacrificing the thing that really matters, which is his alignment and his holding position. So now he is going to, for the rest of his traditional archery career, struggle with plucking off the string because he can't get around the corner and actually execute with proper back tension.
That's good.
Right?
I never thought about that.
So the key here is for you is you have to find this biomechanics, proper holding position, and based off of your forearms, your humeruses, your shoulder to shoulder widths, and your ratios, you come back to your face in proper holding. That's your anchor. And that's why this is my anchor, is because it lines up perfectly with the back of my jaw. My fingers come right to the very back corner of my mouth, and then I can rest my head right against this knuckle here. And I let my biomechanics and my alignment determine my anchor point, not the other way around.
Are you the kind of guy that analyzes people's shots? Like
Yes.
you see them on social media
Every
and you
time.
immediately start thinking about it?
I can't stop. Yes.
Okay. And I don't know that you have watched him much or saw him much, but I've always thought that Cameron Haynes' anchor point of the thumb behind his neck was absolutely ludicrous and stupid. But that being said, I never thought about that.
He might have short forearms.
Maybe his forearms are short enough to where that's where he needs to anchor.
That's
at.
right. Yep.
So what's your, but there's nothing back there to make it repeatable. Like you can't, your neck is just a flat, like.
Sure. With a compound though, you got to figure like the anchor point that we're talking about. So this forward and back anchor point side of things with a compound kind of gets solved by rolling over. So if he's going to roll over to here every single time, he has 1 degree of freedom already locked down because he can't do this. Right. So this is now locked down. So now he's worrying about front to back sight alignment. So if then he brings the string into his face, with his thumb around the back of his neck, and he's looking through the peep, and his peep is concentric with his sight housing, he just locked down his left to right as well. So that's going to be a completely repeatable system. And it's it doesn't surprise me that he can shoot well the way he shoots. And I think that's just where his biomechanics set him up best. Now, the problem is you have these guys that might have physical issues, issues with their shoulders that are making them do something really funky, and they're killers and they're really good. So they're the top 5%. And the problem is that the other 95% of the community, right? The 50th percentile they're super like influenced by what these top 5% people are doing. And you might have these people that are dealing with body issues that are making them do something goofy. And then they think, oh, that's how you need to do it. So that's one thing that I always we're tailoring this system to get you as close to perfect or ideal as possible, because there are, like, in Korea is their national sport is archery. They are dominant in Olympic archery. They literally have like measurements of a body. And if you don't meet these measurement requirements, you can't even like try to make the Olympic team in the program, because there is like a perfect ratio whenever you're looking at shooting recurves of, forearms and humerus and shoulder to shoulder widths that get your anchor points properly, gets you a long draw length of, 28, 30 inches or 29, 30 inches. So there are ways to look at your bodies, and like people at the world's level are like actually filtering their potential athletes based off of the measurements of the things that we're talking about here and the ratios of their limbs. Yeah. So I think people get so caught up in anchor points, and we're talking about anchor points because it's something tactile that we can feel. And it's a whole lot harder to feel your back and your proper alignment. But what we talk about in like solid archery mechanics with Tom Klum, which is the online course that we offer with him, this is where he really hammers on this during this online course is let your body determine where your hand is in relationship with the features on your face. And once you get there, now you find your anchor, like rest your head in there, try to find something that's repeatable. Don't find the anchor first and then sacrifice that alignment because you want to use the finger in the corner of your mouth.
Right. All right. So we're going to do something special here. Okay. I talked about doing it with Tom one time and we just never did. I want to do a thing where I'm going to shoot, however many arrows you want me to shoot, 5, 6, 10.
Okay.
I'm going to post them on my Instagram. And then you can post and I want people to see this interaction.
Okay, cool.
I've always thought it would be cool for them to see the feedback, for them to be able to look at the shot and then hear the feedback of like, hey, here's what you're doing wrong. Try this. Quit doing this. Give that feedback, and then maybe as they associate, like, well, I do that. Like, so maybe I should look at that. I've always thought that would be cool to do like this live in a sense. Like I'm not going to do it live. I'm going to record it and post it, but have somebody give the feedback of like, well, maybe try this or this is where that's wrong. So I thought that'd be really cool.
Not to spoil your idea, but we actually just got done.
Great.
Sorry. I don't want to be that guy. But,
great.
But we actually just got done editing a YouTube video where we made a couple posts a few months ago for people to post their form with 4 different angles that we predetermined around their shot. And then when you post it online, you use hashtag shoot solid. And so that allowed Tom and I to go find them. So we found the videos, we pulled them off the internet, edited them up real quick. And then we basically back to back, we lined them up, and we had a YouTube video that we were playing these form videos that were submitted from the general public and then critiquing them as we went together on a podcast video cast style. And that's actually launching on Monday.
Okay. So did Tom come up with that idea or did you come up with that idea?
No, that was my idea.
Okay. I was going to say if Tom did it, dude, I'm going to karate chop him in the throat because he got it from me.
No. Yeah. He didn't mention anything. Yeah. That's fine.
No, but I think it's cool. And really here's my point behind it. And by no means am I some professional archer. But my point behind it is just like, hey, we can all improve. Like
100%.
I don't want people to think like, oh, well, Matt, he's good. Like no need to practice, we can all improve and we can all fall back into old bad habits.
Oh, 100%.
And having somebody there to say, hey, did you know that you're doing this? Like, did you know that you're plucking the string? Did you know that, you're really not rotating that shoulder over and getting into alignment? Like, do you feel that? Like having somebody there to just check that is really beneficial. And for a lot of us who practice or who want to practice that high level shot execution, We don't have buddies just coming by every day that are wanting to do the same thing.
Yeah,
like,
right. Exactly.
I don't have a Tom Clum that lives on my block, you know?
Yeah.
And so having somebody to look at that, it's beneficial for everybody. I think.
I agree
So,
completely. Yeah. It's archery is a sport that it's a sport of relearning things over and over again every 3 years.
Yeah.
That's all archery is.
Yeah.
Like,
I would agree with that.
You're like, oh, I'm shooting really poorly. And it's like, oh, dummy. That's that thing that you learned 3 years ago, or you're not doing it anymore.
Guys, I am all about prioritizing your feet. If you take care of your feet on the mountains or in the tree stand, you will just undoubtedly last longer. I remember the first time I ever went out west wearing a cheap pair of boots and cotton socks. Hot spots and blisters absolutely just took over that hunt. And here's what I learned. The more comfortable your feet are, the further you'll go, the faster you'll get there, the longer you'll stay on the mountain, and you'll just hunt better because your mind is on the hunt, not on your feet. That's when I come upon Schnee's. Schnee's makes the best mountain boots, in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and tell you my favorite pair. My favorite pair is the Timberlines. I have ran the mountain in those on several different occasions, several different climates, several different, terrain types. And those boots just seem to always perform. They're light, they're fast, they're comfortable. There's no break in. They're Italian made. They're high quality, phenomenal boots. However, I'm also here in the Midwest, do a lot of Midwest hunting, a lot of tree stand hunting. And I'm a big fan of rubber boots for that. Here's why. Leather holds scent. So I'm a big fan that I don't want any leather on my feet when I'm whitetail hunting, walking in and out of my tree stands. So I've always been a leather boot guy. A couple years ago, Schnee's introduced the Highwoods. They now have it in a 0 gram insulation and a 400 gram insulation. It's a phenomenal rubber boot. Again, I have pushed those boots really hard. I've actually used them on quite a few snowy pheasant hunts, walked a lot of miles in them. They're super, super comfortable, super warm, super tough. Guys, prioritize your feet. Take care of your feet. If you're sitting in a tree stand, make sure your feet are going to be warm. If you're on the mountain, make sure you've got a good pair of merino socks and a good pair of boots so you can stay on the mountain longer, hunt harder, be more successful. Guys, go to schnees.com. That's SCHNEES.com for the best boots money can buy.
But back to your original question, we were talking about like, what would
building a shot? Yeah.
Building a shot. So we got through the cams, right? So we talked about, light draw weight, camming over, finding a good holding position. Then the holding position dictates your anchor. So now we have like our gun or our weapon aligned. We have consistent energy being put into the arrow. So now the arrow is going to follow a repeatable trajectory towards the target. Once we have the arrow following a repeatable trajectory towards the target, we can now start figuring out how we want to set it on its trajectory path, aka aiming. So with compounds, like the thought of traditional bows, it's just one of the things that I hate about traditional bows and the stigma is I will sit there and I'll go to my local club or I'll go to a new club and there's this compound guy and he's standing there on the line shooting 30 yards, big and tall like a man, comes into this beautiful anchor point. He's watching that target. He's classic form, big T structure, vertical bow, and he's just ripping, boom, surprise break after surprise break, just owning that weapon, shooting it like a man or a woman, right? And then he's like, hey, that recurve looks pretty cool. Hey, you want to shoot it, buddy? Yeah, let me give that thing a try. I hand it to him, and this guy literally just throws all of his sweat equity that he learned over the last 3 decades perfecting the craft of shooting a compound, throws it all out the window. Mm-hmm. He then spreads his legs twice as wide as shoulder width apart. He crunches over like he's going to take a shit in the woods, turns his bow completely sideways, and he starts just ripping shots down there like he's Katniss Everdeen, right? And it's like,
yep.
I'm like, bro, let's leverage all the sweat equity you put into the sport and shoot the bow like a man, right? Now, I'm not saying that hunched over, sideways bow, shooting it like Katniss, like just snap shooting, you can't be accurate that way. You absolutely can, but you're not going to be accurate that way within the first 2 months of picking this weapon up. You're going to be accurate with it after 5 years. Everybody right now that's amazing at shooting a bow in a very instinctive, snap shooting, crouched over way will tell you about their 10 years of trial by fire until they got to this good spot.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take that long, and you don't have to take that long. Again, these are simple mechanical systems bound by the laws of physics. So if we can just reduce the variability we're putting into these weapons, I can take a recurve and put it on a Hooter shooter and break nocks every single shot. So let's try to become the Hooter shooter ourselves.
Yeah.
So I always urge this guy, as soon as I hand him this bow and he starts crouching tiger, hidden dragon stuff, I'm like, dude, no, stand up tall. We're going to shoot this thing exactly like you shoot your compound. Bear with me here, right? So that's one. So that just stand up tall. You're going to run your shot exactly like you do with a compound. Now, there's going to be some things like if you're going to be aiming using the arrow, you're going to maybe have to cant the bow, tilt it over 5 degrees, but we're not talking a 45 degree, 50, 60 degree cant. Like we're just moving the sight window out of our sight picture, depending on how this anchor point that you found, because you did repeatable alignment and holding position, we can make some changes to how you hold the bow so you can sight down the arrow. But you can aim these bows. So just because you're shooting a recurve doesn't mean you need to be staring at the spot and throwing it like a baseball. So what I really urge people to do as they're picking up a bow for the first time is to use the arrow tip to aim with. And so what we can do is there's a couple different methods, but the easiest method to do is you're going to address the string with all 3 of your fingers underneath the nock. It's called 3 under. And you're going to find an anchor point that's somewhat up near your eye. Once you get into your proper alignment and holding position, we're then going to bump up and try to find an anchor point up here. And you're going to close your left eye at full draw, look right down that arrow shaft towards the tip of your arrow, just like you're shotgunning. And you're going to put the bead of the shotgun, so the tip of the arrow, on the target. Okay. And you're going to shoot the shot, and you're probably going to get hit high if you're standing at 20 yards. And we're going to slowly back up away from the target until your arrow is dropping in right where you're putting your arrow tip. And that's called your point on distance. Mm-hmm. And so for a typical weight recurve and a typical weight arrow and the typical average person's draw length and the draw weight they're shooting, they usually are around 35 to 40 yards as their point on. So at 35 or 40 yards, you're going to find a distance that you can sit there and put the tip of the arrow right on the target and execute your shot. Great. Now we know what your single pin, fixed pin sight is set for. Okay. It's no different than a compound, just putting one single pin there and it's fixed. You can't adjust it. And now you're going to be running it from there. Now, what would you do if you had a fixed single pin sight on a compound and it was set for 25 yards? What would you do at 20? Or what would you do at 15? You're probably going to hold a little low. You're going to start doing this pin gapping thing. That's what we're going to do. So now that we know our point on distance is, let's say for easy math, 40 yards, we're going to go up to the target at around 5 yards, and we're just going to draw back. We're going to put a horizontal tape across the target, and we're going to aim at that horizontal tape. And so you draw back at 5 yards, you stick the tip right at that horizontal tape. You're going to shoot about 5 inches high. So now you know at 5 yards, you have to hold 5 inches low. We're going to do it at 10. That arrow's on its arc up at this point in the shot. So at 10 yards, it's probably going to be like 8 to 10 inches high. 15 yards, it's going to be 12 inches high. 20 yards, it'll be 18 inches high because it's at the apex of the flight towards the target now, if we're looking at 40 yards as our point on distance. So now at 20 yards is where your maximum gap is going to be. So you're going to draw back, stick the tip of the arrow right on that tape, and then you're going to have to drop it down below the target by about 18 inches, and then you're going to shoot the shot. And then as we start getting past that point, that middle range where it's at its highest, it's going to start coming back down. So at 25 yards, it'll be back down to 12 inches, 30 yards, it'll be back down to 8 inches, and so on. So you write those down, and now you have your sight marks. Now you know where you need to hold your arrow in relationship to the target. And that's how you would initially start using the tip of the arrow to start aiming. No matter what your goals are, if you want to be an instinctive archer and just stare at the spot, great. Spend 2 months gap shooting and learning the trajectory of what 165 to 180 feet per second look like. And it's going to make you a much better instinctive archer. Or you're going to continue down the path of even more advanced aiming techniques. And that's whenever we get into like string walking, which would be akin to a fixed single pin slider.
So before I ask you this, let me just say I hate point on. I don't. No, that's how I shoot. I mean the actual point being on the target.
Yeah.
I don't try to achieve a point on. Like if I want to shoot at 24 yards, I want to achieve a lollipop is what I call it.
That's me. Me too.
Where the arrow just leads to the bottom of the target. That way I'm not covering up my point of aim.
I'm the same way.
I can't stand holding a tip over what I want to shoot at. And so
we talk about this a lot in like our competition barebow side, because aiming with the tip of the arrow is so important, like especially indoor when we get towards Lancaster. And so the top guys, they all do different things. So some, like we're using usually 23 diameter arrows. So they're pretty fat arrows for indoor. Some people are using micros, and that's going to really change how your sight picture looks when you're aiming at a 40 centimeter multicolor face target. And some guys lollipop, like you said, that arrow tip rides right up to the bottom of the gold. Some people cut the gold in half. So they want the crown, the tangent point of the arrow to be like on where they want their arrow to hit. And some people do what we call an eclipse hold, where they will like cover the whole gold and red up with their target. And they're using that concentric circle inside the red as their aim point, kind of like you're, using like an aperture sight. And
that it might be different if I wasn't trying to kill an animal. Like that might be different, but for me, it's like if I, and I don't know, I've always just told people like, and this was dating way back before I started shooting a recurve. That's part of how I get rid of buck fever. I don't look at the antlers. Like if there's a buck coming in that I know I'm going to shoot, I start staring right at my point of aim. I start staring right where I want to hit the animal. I don't look at his antlers. I don't look at it. I look at right where so I'm looking at his armpit the entire time he's coming in. I'm looking right at that point. So when it comes to the shot, I don't want to take my eyes off of that point by covering it with an arrow. I want to keep my eyes right where I want to shoot him at and see my arrow out of my peripherals coming right up to it.
Yep. Yeah. So let me describe what I do on my aiming technique here. So I use the tip of my arrow as I'm aiming, as you can probably tell because I'm talking so much like a nerd about it. For hunting, I actually, when I transition, so when you look behind me, you have this orange, white, and black barebow rig. These are my competition rigs. And I shoot those from December pretty much until August 1. And then August 1, I pick up my hunting bow, which is right here over my shoulder right there. And so I start setting up my hunting bow and start figuring all this stuff out. I don't shoot my hunting bow very well in practice. I mean, I know a lot of people see my social media videos. I am a good shooter with my hunting bow. I'm above average, I would say. However, when I compare what I can do with a barebow rig compared to what I can do with my hunting bow, it's because my gaps are so big with my hunting bow, because I use my broadhead as my aiming device. Okay. On my hunting bow. So let me describe what I mean by this. So on the back of the broadhead, I'm painting one of the blades white. Okay. This one's obviously chipped up because I've been shooting it a lot, but that whole blade will be white. And that is my pin sight in my sight picture. So I have it aligned perfectly vertical whenever I'm at full draw, and it's right in my sight picture. So what I do is I aim just like you do. I'm referencing the very tip of this blade in relationship to the target. So the very tip top. So it's glowing and low light. It's perfect. So at 20 yards, the very tip of this blade needs to be on where I want my arrow to go. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at 20 yards, it's just like a little pin sight floating right in the middle of the chest cavity.
Now you have to string walk to achieve that, I'm guessing.
You don't have to. You can have a high anchor point, but I do use a fixed crawl. So for the listeners, I come down the string away from the nock. So I'm addressing all three fingers underneath the nock, but I'm not touching the nock. I'm actually about an inch away from the nock below it. And what that's doing is that's getting the nock of the arrow right underneath my eye. So imagine shooting a shotgun and putting the comb of the shotgun at the bottom of your jaw. You're going to see a lot of that barrel, right? That barrel is going to be tipped up. And so if you put the front bead on that clay pigeon, you're going to be shooting way over top of it, right? So what you're always trying to do is get the comb of that shotgun up on your cheekbone. So you're sighting straight down the the beads of the shotgun. So now the barrel's in line with what you're actually pointing at. It's the same with archery and an arrow. So the closer I can get that knock of that arrow under my eye, I'm shotgunning down that barrel. It's going to bring my point on distance in. So coming down the string about an inch from the knock takes my point on from 40 yards down to 20 yards. And then this is when go ahead.
I don't want to derail your aiming method talk here.
Okay.
How does that affect your tune? Going an inch down the string, how does that affect your tune? Do you have to change your tiller? What do you change in order to get the bow to tune when you begin to?
So that's why I choose to use more advanced equipment like ILF bows, which are international limb fit bows. They're fully adjustable. They're just like a compound. Tinkering with the bolts on the compound that are holding the limbs to the riser, it's the same thing. So you're changing the preload of the limbs, changing the tiller, changing the dynamic reaction of these things. So I can come down the string an inch and start shooting my bow. And if my bow starts growling at me and becomes very loud, that means my limbs aren't coming to brace in time with each other. So now I have to start monkeying around with the preload of those limbs in comparison with where I'm holding down the string. And it's not that big a deal, but where I think a lot of people struggle is whenever they're shooting like this Black Widow that's behind me or any other wood bow that doesn't have tiller adjustment or weight adjustment, they are just bound by whatever the bow is, right? So you can achieve a crawl in two ways. So let's say you're shooting 3 under, you put your fingers up against the knock and you come to your anchor point that's super repeatable for you. And let's say your point on distance is 40 yards. You can leave everything where it's at and come down the string by an inch. And then that whole system moves up and that arrow knock then goes from 3 under with the same anchor point to now I come down an inch and do the same anchor point. That arrow comes right under my eye, right?
Yeah.
So you can achieve a crawl by coming away from the knock, or you can achieve a crawl by raising your knock point up and keeping your fingers in the same spot. So with a bolt down bow, it's tillered from the Boyer to be shot 3 under, most likely, right? So from the bow's perspective, just grab the string right where that 3 under point is, and then just put an artificially high knock point on that. And now you've just essentially achieved a crawl, but your bow doesn't know the difference because you're still shooting it from the dynamic same spot.
So to raise the knock up, like you're talking, leave your fingers the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you're shooting off of a rest or something, I'm sure.
You could shoot off the shelf. Like this Black Widow, I can shoot this Black Widow off the shelf, and it's pretty tolerant to crawls up to about a 3/4 inch crawl.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I hunt, like I've spent years hunting with a fixed crawl off the shelf. Now, what I just described 2 methods of finding a crawl, right? You actually go down the string, which will most likely make a wood bow growl a little bit at you, or you can bring the knock height up. I split the difference. So a lot of my wood bows off the shelf usually end up at about a 3/4 inch to 7/8 inch high knock height. And then I'm coming down the string a 1/4 inch from 0, from like that 3 under position. So I'm like splitting the difference.
That makes sense.
So I'm finding this happy area where the bow might be a little upset with me, but it's not loud enough to booger anything up from a hunting perspective. And it's just like a compromise between the two.
Now, would it not help tremendously to slap like a bear weather rest on?
Yes.
And that way.
So now that whole system, so think about it this way. So a bear weather rest is awesome for crawling because you have your arrow and your knock attached to the string in this plane right here. Mm-hmm. And if you try to achieve a crawl by raising your knock height, your resting position's like this, right? And so that's going to add a bunch of goofy paradox and stuff potentially that you're going to have to work through with tuning. But if you add a bear weather vest and raise your knock height together, that whole system moves up.
Yeah.
Right. And then now your fingers are left behind. So the whole system, the whole arrow point and rest moves up together like this rather than like this. So everything moves up together. Your fingers stay here. Dynamically, the bow's happy. Knock height wise, the arrow's happy. That's the most ideal way to run this, would be to slap a bear weather vest on a wood bow for sure.
Okay. Now, again, I have completely derailed your aiming story here. However,
we do need to get back to that because I think a lot of guys will benefit from that.
100%. Last question on crawling. What kind of knock do you tie on to where it's prominent enough to where a hunting situation, you slide your tab up and it hits and you know you're there? I can't tie a knock on that is prominent enough to feel that.
Yep.
To just hit it and know that's where I'm at. And I hate brass knocks. So what kind of knock are you putting on to know where your tab goes up to?
You're not gonna like my answer.
A brass knock.
Yeah. It's the only way. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, that's what the conclusion I had come to.
Yeah.
So
like I use a like a Yoast tab. And so running this metal plate, like low light, I don't even have to think about it. And that's another, like some guys actually head a field and actually string walk for every distance, which is crazy to me. Kudos to them. I've always wanted to do it, but I'm just too scared of like that deer's walking down the path. It's at 18. I look down, I make my 18-yard crawl. I look back up. Shit, he's at 14 and I have to come back down and reset. Then
it's like adjusting your single pin.
Yeah. How are you going to adjust that single pin sight in low light? And if you're like, a compound's different because like you could just shoot and pin gap pretty easily if the deer's walking in from 22 and the shot happens at 17. But with a trad bow going 175 feet per second, shooting a 600 plus grain arrow, like you need to know the difference there, because that's the difference between vital organs and not, because you'll miss high or low if your crawl's not right, if you don't have it right. So I use a brass knocking point just for that reason, is like deer's coming in, I just slide up that string until I feel that positive contact, it hits it, and it's perfect.
Have you ever played with speed knocks, like the little rubber knocks that just slide up your string?
Oh yes, you know what I have? I had a bow. This was years ago. This was probably 10 years ago that I used like 4 or 5 of those speed knocks stacked up with each other.
Can I just say they don't move?
They don't.
Like,
they don't move. Now
I don't know why more people don't use them.
I've had them move on me if you use just one by itself. I find the sweet spot is 3. 2 of them work okay as long as you're not like really jacking your tab plate up against it as you're finding your crawl. But whenever I settled on it, I was just too paranoid about them moving. And they do like over time slowly like
stretch out
and stuff. So I was paranoid about that. So I just stacked them. I stacked up like 5 of them from the knockdown, and then that just set my crawl.
Dude, like, now don't get me, I have not put them on my bows. I put them on one of like the Bear Bullseye X's, which is like a super lightweight short bow for my kids. But honestly, I thought my kids are going to be rougher on that knock than I am.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be, just slinging that thing around like crazy. And so I really wanted to see like, man, this is a beautiful solution to knocking points. And so I put silver Sharpie on the string right where the knock was. And I mean, it's been there for 3 years. And I mean, the kids have, ran up and down it and played with it. And, we've had neighborhood kids shoot it. They've, my son's tried to strap a release onto it. Like, I mean, if anybody was going to move it, I would thought it would have been those kids. Now, it probably massively has to do with how your string is built too. Diameter of your string.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
How tight is your, how thick is your serving? But man, I will definitely be trying more of those because I think it's a cool solution.
Yeah, I agree. They do
think it's cool.
Yeah, I've tried them in the past. They work great, and they were fine. I don't mind using a brass knocking point, and I also like the metal on metal contact I get.
Yeah,
you get a little bit of like, because my whole tab, even the back plate is metal, so I get this like positive vibration when it hits. Like it doesn't make any noise, but I can feel it. Like I don't even have to look down at my string. Like, and I can keep my eyes on that deer as it's coming in. I know I'm at my home position. Like nothing needs to change.
All right, back to aiming methods.
Oh,
sorry,
okay. Yeah.
I completely crashed that.
So back to aiming methods. Again, we're using this broadhead. I'm coming down the string by about 1 inch to bring my point on distance to the point where the very tip of my broadhead here is 20 yards. And now this is right in my sight picture, this vertical plane here. So now at 25 yards, I'm using the middle of the blade right here. So I just raise this post right up through that deer. And once I get the middle section of the blade right in the middle of the vitals, that's 25 yards. And the base of my blade is 30. So I have a 20, a 25, and a 30, always having some landmark on my arrow on the animal itself. Super repeatable. But this is the real reason why I set those distances, is because at 18 yards and under, all I have to do is stick the tip of this blade at the bottom of the chest cavity and let it eat. That's it. So I am a traditional bow hunter. I'm a good shot. I compete. I just feel like I'm a really good shot, right? I hate shooting at animals past 20 yards. I hate it. There's just so much shit that can happen with 160 feet per second bow. And I just don't like it. Have I killed deer at 25, 28? Yes, for sure. And have I done it semi-regularly? Yes. But when I'm setting up, when I'm going in with my lone wolf on my back, I'm a mobile hunter. I love bedding areas. That's like my favorite hunt of all time is knowing where they're bedding, sneaking in, taking way too much time to like slowly pick my way into this spot, climb the tree, get up and start glassing around. And within 60 yards, I can see a deer in its bed. Like that is my perfect hunt. And then within 60 yards of them being on their feet for the evening, I have an arrow in them and I'm getting them right as they're stepping out of that bedding area. So I'm always setting up like I want them at 12 yards. That is my favorite shot, 12 to 15 yards. That's what we're looking for. Now, in addition to that, we do a lot of data entry with one of my partners, Cody Greenwood from the Trad Lab. And we like to collect data from the public on their kills or their wounds and losses. And so we have a form that we ask them to fill out. We have thousands of entries into this, and we're collecting this data set to understand what the general population in the traditional community is doing from what's your average shot distance, where are your arrows impacting this animal, what angle were they at, how far did they go, what broadhead were you using, or what poundage were you using. We're just like trying to get as much data as possible, and then we can aggregate it and then use it for, more research, more studies and stuff. And what we're finding over thousands of entries, the average shot distance in the traditional world is 14 to 15 yards. Yeah. So that is like right there. It's right. Mm-hmm. So that's how I hunt as well. So I want to be able to see the whites of their eyeballs, and I want a repeatable aiming system that I don't have to think in the moment of truth. So if that deer is at 8 yards or that deer is at 18 yards, all I have to do is take the tip of that broadhead and stick it right at the bottom of the chest cavity and let it eat. Because of the tolerance gap of this 8-inch tall vitals, it's sucking up the variation of, do I need to have a 1-inch air gap below the chest for 18 versus 12-inch or 12 yards I need to be touching the bottom of the chest? It doesn't matter. All I have to do is just stick it there, run the rest of my shot, and I don't have to think about aiming at all, unless it gets to my 20, 25, or 30. That's whenever I have to go, okay, this is at 22 yards. Make an adjustment.
Which is also why I like the lollipop, because I know if I have a 24-yard lollipop, then I hold at the bottom of the chest for everything under.
Absolutely. Same exact process.
So at 24 yards, if I'm running the tip of that broadhead up to where it meets the target and makes a lollipop, then basically anything under that, I hold at the bottom of the chest and let it rip, tater chip.
Yep. And I was mentioning like that is the reason why I don't shoot this bow. Like once my hunting bow, so what I basically do is if I'm going to shoot my hunting bow in the summertime, just for like league nights or whatever, and I've put my bare bow, my competitive rig away, I will set my crawl. I'll actually come down the string further than my hunting crawl, so I can stick the tip of my field point like on the animal at that 20 yards and under range. So like 18,
makes sense.
15, I want the tip of my field point to be at the bottom of the chest. But then whenever I convert to hunting mode and I get my crawl set to the point where the tip of my broadhead is 20 yards, now though, when I have field points on this same setup, my arrow tip is so far below that animal. That's why I was saying earlier, I don't shoot my hunting bows once they're actually tuned and set up for hunting very well in practice, because I'm using field tips and I'm basically shooting my 30-yard point on setup with field tips. And so that's why I practice with broadheads from like now onward. I'm going to be shooting broadheads. Like every group of arrows, I have a few broadheads in my quiver that I'm always shooting.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, and I don't think I really am completely changing subjects, because we're talking aiming methods.
Sure.
And you mentioned the guy who's just an instinctive shooter.
Yep.
Now, I just want to note this. Like, there's a difference in instinctive shooting and drawing back and plucking the string and just letting it rip.
Unfortunately, they got biased and
they got lumped together,
hand in glove with each other, and they're not.
You can be an instinctive shooter and still practice a really good shot, a really good executed shot.
Yep.
And you can be an instinctive shooter and or you could be a point on shooter and not practice a good executed shot. They do not go hand in hand.
That's right.
I know some really good shooters who practice perfectly executed shots, fully instinctive. In other words, they stare at where they want to hit and they just let the shot break naturally, and the arrow somehow hits where they want it to hit. So in the same sense, like over the last couple of years, I have become kind of an instinctive point on shooter. So basically the only time I ever reference the point of my arrow is at the lollipop distance. So if this setup, which the stalker I'm setting up right now, it's going to be about 34 yards. I don't shoot a crawl though, just so everybody knows. So it seems going to be about 34 yards, and I want mine to be a little bit further, for elk, antelope, getting a little bit further shots. Anyways, 34 yards. So when I get to 34 yards is the only time I ever really truly like look at the point of my arrow. Everything under that, I'm staring right where I want to hit. And then I'm just kind of instinctively or out of the corner of my eye, out of my peripherals, referencing the point of my arrow.
We call that gap stinctive.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. Where it's like,
that sounds like an STD, but
it's like you're at 22 yards. Your thought process is draw back and aim. You're aware of your arrow tip. Yep. That looks about right. Not 22 yards. I need to be 8 inches below right there. Right. And you're actually right. It's almost like a feel good gap. Like, my tip needs to be down in this area near the bottom of the chest. Yeah, that looks good. I'm moving on. Right.
Yep. That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, that's how I hunt as well. I hunt that way. My competition, I'm like the opposite. It's a 23-yard shot. I'm going to go between my 20 and 25-yard crawl. I string walk down to that specific distance, and every single shot, my arrow tip is cutting the 10 ring where I want it to hit. For every distance, I'm coming to a different crawl. Yeah. But for hunting, I'm the exact same way. Like that deer comes in at 15 yards. I'm not saying 15 yards, I need to put my broadhead tip here. I'm just literally like draw back. Yep, that looks good. All right, let's let it eat. And then I run my rest of my shot.
And the reason I like that is because for those easier, quicker, I shouldn't say easier, but for those closer distance, easier shots, it's like, it's just more comfortable. It's quicker. It's funner. But then when you get to those distance of like, man, I'm stretching it out. Like now I have that reference point of 100%. Like, okay, I can rely on this. And I know at 31 yards, like if I just lollipop it, or I'm sorry, if I make an eye, where it's just leading up and there's a little bitty gap, like I know I'm good. Like it gives you that comfortable something to rely on when you really start getting out there and you really start thinking like, man, the deer's at 30 yards, but he's completely calm. Like I really think I can make this shot. It gives you that thing to be a little more reliant on. But when he just runs through at 17 yards and you're like, oh yeah, you're dead. You just get to run that shot a little more quicker, a little calmer, if you will. Like you don't have to think about all those things. And so that's how I run my stuff.
Love it.
Now
that's pretty common. That's a common approach,
which I've enjoyed it. I mean, I've enjoyed the process of just kind of learning that, and going through that. Speaking of Cody, I want to do a podcast with you guys on this tuning video. This tuning course that you guys put together, because that's something that it's always funny to me. When I go to set up a compound, I just set up a compound for a buddy the other night. And so, you're getting into all this crap with cams and you're trying to change strings and it's in the press and you're like, dude, why don't I just always shoot recurves and only worry about recurves because they're so much easier.
Right.
And then when you go to really micro tune your recurve, you're like, dude, why don't I just shoot compounds all the time? Because I take one bolt out and move the rest over a 16th of an inch and this thing's shooting bullets.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I always go back and forth on that, but this stalker, and I'm not saying anything bad about the stalker. I told South this on last week's episode, has given me the runaround on tuning it. I almost just used it as firewood. Made me so stinking frustrated. I I've got it now. But anyways, I think that's a very beneficial course that you guys put together on that tuning course.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think thanks for bringing that up. So we went out, Cody Greenwood from the Trad Lab. This dude is a statistical analyst. He's a huge nerd. I'm a huge nerd. And he basically came onto the scene by taking very common biases of like something as simple as more feather, the better, right? Is something that you hear in the traditional community. So when a new archer's coming into the game, people are like, oh, just use 3 5-inch, 5.5 inch high cut shield feathers. And, you know, just watch the flight of the arrow and you're tuned, you're good enough. Right. So he like tested the biases on like, okay, what happens when those feathers get wet versus using 4 small 2.5 inch feathers, like a 4 fletch configuration. Shot them in heavy crosswinds, just did this giant data analysis set. And we launched that, like we call it Trad Lab episodes. And he does is like, he basically calls his data sets courtroom ready. So like he shares all the data publicly. Anybody can cross check and peer review everything he's doing. He's like taking a very scientific courtroom ready approach to this awesome sport of traditional archery. So that's kind of introducing who Cody Greenwood is. And so then we started doing all these podcast episodes and everything. And we had an experiment we were running that our goal was to prove that this geometry or type of arrow shaft, like a tapered arrow, was like we were going to blow up the world, showing an actual true data set, showing that tapered arrows recover faster, penetrate better, are easier to tune, blah, 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 all these different benefits. And so we rented a super high speed camera and hung it from a ceiling on an archery range. And then we took a big grid pattern and made 1-inch grid sections. So we were shooting over top of that grid. And the high speed camera was like evaluating the archer's paradox as these arrows were coming out of the bow from different distances. And we were trying to show with data that, you know, these types of arrow shafts recover on average faster, blah, 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 whatever. So we started finding that we had a system that Cody told us how to tune these bows. So as we were shooting these arrows and like, okay, next arrow up is this one. We tune it. We went through a quick tuning process and then started shooting. And what we found, I called Cody in distress going, dude, these arrows are recovering within 5 feet of leaving our bow. Like we can't measure any paradox with these arrows. They're fully recovered within 5 to 10 feet clearing the bow. Like something's wrong. We're like, and it didn't matter if we were using tapered shafts, you know, 166, 204s, 5/16, like we were getting the same results. And I was like, something's broke. We F this up. And then he like took that back and pondered on a little bit. And then he called me a few days later and he's like, dude, I think we just stumbled onto like something epic here from a tuning perspective. And then we started talking about the tuning process, and it's completely opposite of what most people do in the industry. Right. And so he takes this approach at troubleshooting and matching a tuning process, whether you're flight shooting, bare shaft tuning, paper tuning, broadhead tuning, like all of these different things. We teach the archer how to determine what process they want to use. And one thing that we look at when you look at the amount of tuning content out there, a lot of it is following the practices of competitive archers. Competitive archers do not care if their arrow is sticking in the target like this, like this, like this, as long as it is producing repeatable, super tight groups and they're scoring properly. They do not care about the arrow flight. They do not care about how it's coming into the target. All they're worried about is points on a scorecard. But yet we're taking these tuning advices from these people that don't care about the node alignment. So as an arrow is paradoxing, there's 2 points along the shaft that aren't moving in space. The rest of the shaft is bending around those 2 fulcrum points. If those nodes are out of a line as it's striking the target, you're robbing yourself of insane amount of penetration and lethality if those nodes aren't aligned. So we want these nodes aligned perfectly as it's striking the target. So you're translating as much of that force through the animal as possible. But what we found was it's counterintuitive. You think, okay, I'm going to shoot a trad bow or even a compound. I'm going to shoot this at 60 yards with a compound, 70 yards at a compound, or let's say 35 yards with a trad bow. These are like typically for the 50 percentile archer, long shots. And so you would think, oh, I need to have a hyper-tuned bow to be able to produce consistent results at those further distances. And that's not actually the case, because the arrow has so much time to bend and flex and recover and get those nodes aligned before it hits the target. So a further shot from a penetration perspective is not like, I know there's loss of energy on its actual trajectory to the flight path, but when we're looking at a node perspective, an alignment, the longer the shot, the longer it takes, or the more time your arrow has to align its nodes before it strikes the target. Where it's super important is, this is where we kind of flip this thing on its head, is for a traditional bow hunter that's shooting 8, 12, 15 yards. That's not a lot of time for your arrow to correct itself. So our goal, it's not about producing super, super tight groups. Our goal is to get the nodes aligned and your arrow recovered within feet of leaving your bow. And you can get it done, and you can achieve perfect bullet holes through this program in paper at 3 feet, 6 feet, and 12 yards. Like, those are our 3 windows of time, because what a lot of people do is they shoot through paper at one distance. Well, your arrow might still be flexing and recovering, but as the front node, as this arrow's bent, passes through the paper, it's coming back and flexing back the other way, and the feathers come through at the exact same hole location, because the arrow is actually bending through that hole in space as it's passing through. And you might get a perfect bullet hole at that distance you're paper tuning. But a lot of people just go, oh, got a perfect bullet hole, I'm good. If you step back 4 feet and do it again, now you're going to have a 1-inch tear.
Dude, you are a nerd.
Right?
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
There might be a shirt coming to you pretty soon.
Okay.
I hinted this. For those of you that don't know, I work for Pope & Young as well, and we are going to release a shirt that says "Redneck Nerd."
I love that.
It says
That's
knowledge
awesome.
is dead. Says knowledge is deadly.
That's sweet.
And really, the point behind that is to encourage people. And honestly, the Pope & Young, we're doing it from a standpoint of conservation, educate on why we buy tags, on why tags are allocated the way they are, on issues that are on, surrounding our public lands, all that. Educate yourself on that type of stuff. But really, it comes down to your equipment as well. I mean, just educate yourself on all of this stuff. And there's 100%. Nothing wrong with being a well-educated killer.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with being able to nerd out about this stuff. I think gone are the days of just saying like, well, this is what's always worked,
that's right.
So that's what I continue to use.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be cool. Now I want to share this real quick, and then I have just a couple quick questions on the arrows. I got invited to do a career day at my wife's school. Cool. And so I took a compound and a recurve, and I was talking about the history of Pope & Young and the advancements of technology, and how, we went from this and now we have this, as far as technology goes, and how, Pope & Young plays a role in the advancements of technology. And I said, does anybody know the question, or does anybody know the difference in these two bows? They're both a bow. They both fire arrows. Does anybody know the difference in these? And I was trying to get them to say technology. I was trying to get them to say that one's a lot newer, that one's a lot more advanced. And this kid on the front row, you can tell, just a complete nerd, raises his hand and he says, "Archer's Paradox." And I was like,
that's awesome.
kids like in first grade, second grade. I'm like, what did you just say? I love that. And he said, "Archer's Paradox. It's when the arrow has to bend to get around the bow and has to flex." And I'm like, dude, first off, you're the coolest kid I've ever met in my entire life. Like, first off, and actually what was funny is one of my kids was in the class at that time. I'm like, cool. Dude, you're my favorite kid in this entire group. That's okay. And my son was like, hey. But, that's awesome. No, it was funny. So on the vanes, on feathers, talked about, you started off by testing the difference in 3 long 5s, 4 long short 2s. What did you find is the most?
Yeah, we found that 4-fletch 90-degree configuration in a 2.5-inch vane or feather is best for tunability and forgiveness in crosswinds. Whenever you have a large 5.5-inch shield cut feather in inclement weather, so we also did, like, we had a bucket there, and there would be a counted swirling technique to, like, really soak the feathers for a standardized amount of time and amount of rotations. And then we were shooting the arrows and stuff and all that. Well, Cody was doing all this data analysis and stuff. And we're finding that, like, the bias is, in rainy conditions, I want more feather on the back of the arrow because.
But then it's heavier.
Exactly. It absorbs more water and actually is way more detrimental to your flight characteristics in inclement weather. So the less feather back there, the better.
So let me just throw a wrench in this. Why not just shoot a trad vane? We ain't got to worry about it.
Well, you can't. Now, trad vanes are great. There's nothing wrong with those as well. But trad vanes are not going to perform as well as a feather in good conditions, which is we hunt mostly in good conditions, right? So in a crosswind, those feathers are grabbing that air as it's spinning. It's giving you way more benefits than a trad vane will in like good conditions or even slight crosswinds. Like it's going to stay on its trajectory path better than a trad vane will. But a trad vane, like, is it practically? So again, Cody and I always preface everything with there is data driven better, quote unquote, better or worse, but there is also in practicality. So we always do these studies. So our standard process is we go out to the community, we ask questions, or Cody does these sneaky posts where he will just post a video of a broadhead with giant serrations that he added to the broadhead. And then he'll ask like one open-ended question, like testing. What do you guys think? What are your theories around serrated broadheads? And then the community drives how we set up this design of experiments. So the community like chimes in and they're saying all these theories and why they believe this. And he just basically like pulls this grenade and throws it into these forums and then sits back and watches. And then he takes all the reaction and the feedback and he's like, okay, here's all the biases. Here's the problem statement. And then we design the design of experiments around what the common beliefs is and not so common beliefs is. And then we go and test it with data. But we then produce the show and produce the content around all of these theories that the community basically communicated and drove. But at the very end, we also say, okay, we just talked about the data-driven better versus worse, but is practicality in practical terms, does it actually matter? Can you shoot the difference? Can it actually move the needle in real life situations? And a lot of times the answer to that is no. So like back to your point, a trad vane, a 2.5 inch trad vane versus a 2.5 inch feather, everything is about compromises, right? The archery is a game of compromising, whether you're using a heavy arrow versus a non-heavy arrow, mechanical broadheads versus fixed broadheads. It's all hedging your bets. If you're a person that is historically shooting in the liver and guts, you should probably look at a large, wider cut mechanical. If you're a guy that always hugs that shoulder and you're really shooting for that golden triangle and you smack a bunch of shoulders, you should probably look at a fixed blade, right? And then you can talk about the pros and cons of both. You just got to look at you, how you hunt, how you shoot, the equipment you prefer, take in all the data, and then make decisions for yourself. Is this practically going to move the needle for me or not? And that's how we always structure our shows.
Last question.
Yeah.
Have you tried just a lower profile, like standard vane off the shelf to where, you know, it's a low enough profile to where you don't have to worry about contact, but it's long enough. I'm thinking specifically about the heat vane from boning, which I don't know if you are familiar with that vane, but it's, you know, a 2.25 inch vane. But I think it's low enough profile to where I could shoot it off the shelf of my recurve and never have an issue. What have you found with that?
So there's a couple things that you said here that I want to address. So one, if you're using vanes, I'm a big vane proponent. So I've spent years actually shooting and testing all different types of vanes. I usually shoot from an elevated springy rest on my ILF bows here, like the one you see back here, that one. So I have the ability to get some good arrow flight with, you know, stiffer vanes that are designed for compounds. But again, it comes down to like practically. So how big is my window of tune? How good is my arrow tune? So as the back of my arrow is clearing my shelf, how much room for error do I have in that clearance? So if I'm shooting in my backyard and I'm stress-free and it's no big deal and I'm getting perfect arrow flight, perfect bullets, everything's good. A lot of times what people do is their very first high pressure, shaky hands, huge adrenaline dump arrow is at the first deer of the year. And all of a sudden their arrow is flying to target with a huge bounce off their shelf. And they're not testing their equipment in high stress. They're not seeing this big plucky shot or the stiff fingers or the heavy breathing type of shot that you have. So I really urge people, like, don't trust just what you do under perfect conditions. Like, really test your equipment. get out there and shoot with your buddies or some strangers, put some money on some arrows, put a $20 bill down on the round with one of your buddies, like do anything to give those arrows that you're shooting a little bit more value, because that's going to show you how big and how forgiving your window of tune is that you've achieved. So I know that was a roundabout answer to or answering your question here. But yes, they absolutely do. They can work if you can get the clearance.
Yeah.
But one thing that you said, which is really interesting, the diameter, if you look at the back of the arrow from behind and you draw a circle around the highest points of every vein around your arrow, right? You're going to come up with a diameter circle. That diameter circle essentially has to be clearing this bow as it's detaching from your string once the string comes back to brace, and it's clearing your shelf, and your arrow is starting to flex. And so it's not only where your arrow is positioned statically in relationship to your side plate and your shelf, but also what's it doing dynamically as the arrow is bending and it's clearing that shelf. So that's one thing to think about. But also something to think about is when you turn it this way and you look at it from a length distance away from the nock of the arrow. So if this is your rear node of your arrow, and as you're shooting and the energy is being transferred to your arrow and the arrow gets back to brace, this arrow is flexing, right? It's flexing as it's coming across that shelf and leaving. The further forward your fletchings start, the more probability you have for contact on your shelf. So that's another reason why we found that short veins, the 2.5 inchers, are more forgiving. It's because we're getting literally zero clearance, because this arrow, as this section where this Black Eagle band is, as this is coming across the shelf and the shelf is moving back towards the feathers, and the feathers, this arrow is bending away from the shelf, the longer that you give this before your feather actually starts, the better. And so you were talking about also, like,
do you move your fletchings backwards?
Yeah, you can move your fletchings backwards as well, right? So starting in that 3 inches away from the nock, 3.5 inches away from the nock, is like having the start of your vein or feather being in that 3.5 range away from the back of your nock is like a really good spot. Like you get a lot of good clearance. That arrow's like,
now I want to measure.
Yeah.
You've given me so much stuff to think about.
Nerd fest, man.
I'm gonna have to skip dinner tonight with the family because I'm gonna be out here measuring arrows. Yeah. No, I mean, and again, it seemed like you were familiar with this arrow, but if you're watching on YouTube, that was my donk. And you know, this is my wife's compound arrow, and hers are moved up quite a ways. But really, I mean, if you move those back 1/4 of an inch, I mean, you've got a really, I don't know. I just thought these would be a really beautiful recurve arrow.
Yeah, they could. Absolutely. Yeah. There's, if you can get the clearance and then you can get forgiving clearance, which is more important, there's no reason why it couldn't work.
Now, have you ever shot veins off of the shelf though?
I have. I've gotten them again. Now you start getting into vein orientation. I typically could not get like a stiff vein and a 4-fletch configuration to work, but sometimes I can get like a 3-fletch configuration to work by facing one of the veins in towards the window, which is counterintuitive, right? You're just basically finding this perfect sweet spot where the arrow is consistently flexing past the shelf.
That's also not a big, never mind. Won't focus on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying there. So like in those situations with those stiffer feathers, like there is a chance that they're not very forgiving because they're just barely slipping past your shelf, maybe straddling 2 of those stiff veins as it's coming across a feature on your bow. And you think you're good until you get into a high stress situation and have a bad pluck or stiff fingers.
So you want the start of your vein to be, you said 3.5 inches or less.
Yeah, just less. You want to be like back further. Like,
yeah.
And again, we're talking like a 5.5 inch feather that is 1 inch away from the nock, the back of the feather there. So we're talking that's going to be like a 6.5 inches up the shaft is where the contact potentially could start. Versus running a 2.5 inch vein.
Is this from the throat of the nock or from the carbon?
It's just from like the throat. I mean, this is not a super scientific study. Like
this is scientific, and I'm measuring every single arrow that I have in the shop today.
What is yours at right now?
My wife's compound arrow from the throat of the nock starts right at 3.5.
Okay. Yeah.
From the carbon starts right at 3 1/4.
Yep. Yeah.
And again, her veins are fletched quite a ways up. I mean, I could easily move those back.
Sure.
Easily a quarter of
an
an
inch.
inch.
And for compound, right? It's not as important because drop away rests, like there's clearance, the way the bow's imparting energy onto the arrow. There's no actual left to right paradox happening. It's more porpoising up and down in the vertical plane.
Yeah.
So it's not that big a deal in the compound world, but in the recurve world, it's just one of the theories or one of the biases that were out there was like more feather, the better. But we were finding that it was not forgiving. And we're like, why is this not forgiving? Well, one, it's not forgiving because those larger feathers hold more water. They get affected more by heavy crosswinds. And then finally, then we stumbled upon, your potential for contact starts way up the shaft versus fletching with smaller feathers and starting them further back.
How far do you, because this is my old recurve setup. So I shoot this is 3-inch trad vanes in a 4 fletch. How far up do you recommend starting your fletchings?
Yeah, honestly, because I'm always using small feathers and I don't have issues with this. So I'm not having to push the limits. So I have fletched like an 1/8 inch up from the carbon. I've done that before just to like maximize my clearance, but I'm using the very last mark on my Bitzenberger jig. So I'm not like, it looks just like all my arrows look just like yours. Like, I mean, they're back a little bit further. They're not a full inch, right? They're like 3/4 of an inch away from the back of the arrow. That's like kind of where I like to start them. And the reason why I pull those back is because I'm using 4-inch feathers on this particular arrow. So I will like the bigger the feather I use, I will justify it back towards the nock more.
Interesting stuff, man. Yeah. It gives like that. This is why I like recurves. Like, so in the same breath, this is why recurves piss me off. This is also why
they're supposed to be
them
simple, right?
It's an art, though.
There's
like
art.
With a compound, dude, I can tune my wife's arrow to shoot out of my bow. Like, is it the best arrow to shoot? No, like not by any stretch of the imagination. But I can tune her arrows to shoot out of my bow, and vice versa. Like, you can pretty much tune any bow to any arrow. But with recurves, it's really like you're finding out, what is my bow like? Like, what is this singular bow? And you can't even say it's across the bow. You can't even say all bear grizzlies, like a 400 spine cut to 29.5 inches with 150 grains out front. You can't even say that. It's what does this bow like? Well, that's
one thing we talk about really heavily in precision tuning, which, by the way, we just launched it today. We're running a huge preseason sale on precision tuning for the diehard bow hunter, the online course. We usually retail it for $197 for one-time payment, lifetime access to the course content, and you get every future edition. Like when we put new modules in there, automatically updates to your profile for free. So a lot of value here. We all usually sell them for $197 for the lifetime course. We're doing a preseason sale at $157 right now. So a 20% off preseason sale until September 20th. So if anybody out there that's listening that like really wants to take their game to the next level from a tuning perspective, whisper quiet bows, better penetration, more forgiving setups, like now's the time to jump in on that. But we talk about this super heavily. Sorry for the shameless plug, but
I'm about to give you a plug too.
But what we do is we look at that, like you just said, I could tune this arrow to this bow. You got to figure out what the bow likes. Everyone thinks that way. That's the stigma, is like, oh, I got this bow, try to get this arrow tuned to this bow. But everyone misses the first step of that. It's, I got to tune the bow to the archer, because we are the biggest variation source in the entire mechanical system. The reason why you said how easy it is to get your wife's arrow to tune to your bow is because there's no variability being introduced to the system from the archer's perspective for the most part, right? There's like the cams are taking care of it. The alignment's there. You're releasing it with a release aid. There's no archer's paradox associated with it. It's easy. But with a trad bow, you have to tune yourself. You pluck the string, you release this smoothly, you do this with your bow hand and torque the bow this way. You have to tune the bow to you and get it to its happy place right in the middle of the window of tune. A lot of people start tuning their bows and they look at like the manufacturer's recommendation for brace height. They set it there, they set their 5/8 inch nock height, and then they're like, okay, I'm ready to start tuning. And then they grab arrows and they start trying to cut arrows and tune arrows. And if your window of tune is like this, meaning when I shoot a perfect shot, I'm here, right in the middle of the window of tune. So if I shoot a less than perfect shot in this direction or a less than perfect shot in this direction, like whatever we're looking at the scale, whether it's super plucky or super smooth or super aggressive or slow release or a little bit of torque this way or a little bit of torque that way, like you want your window of tune, you want to be placed here. So the window of tune, you're getting great arrow flight in variation. To do that, you have to tune the bow to the archer and get you here to start. And then you start tuning the arrow to the bows. It's a two-step process. But what we find is a lot of people just like take the manufacturer's recommendations. There's bows out there being made by people that cannot create a large window of tune because they're not repeatable systems. The variation is not only coming from you, the archer, but the bow is actually changing. Sloppy tillers, changing dynamic tillers, different performances in different weather, like they don't have resilient materials or their geometry of their limbs don't produce consistent results in 30-degree weather versus 90-degree weather. Like there's a ton of variation happening on the bow side. And there's some bows that are always going to the window of tune. You may be doing everything perfect. The bow is doing this on you as conditions change, right? So we also in this course teach you how to inspect and look at designs of bows, what are going to be more forgiving. When you come out of the course, you're going to be able to look on a catalog online and look at a bow and say, that's going to be a forgiving bow. I'm going to try that one, right? You can actually start shopping more intelligently for yourself. But what we find is people set up their bow, get it to like shooting okay, and they're like, okay, now I'm going to ready to start tuning my arrow. They're starting off here on the edge of their window of tune. And then they tune the arrow to the bow, and that arrow might be here. And now they've positioned their perfect repeatable shot in their backyard here, but their window of tune is like this. And so they might have some plucky releases, still good arrow flight because you're having errors in this direction, but then they start having arrows in this direction and shit blows up, like shooting from an elevated stand. Have you ever had a perfect tune, shooting flat in a big T-style position, and then you go up to a tree stand to start practicing before season, you start shooting and you're getting this massive kick. And you're like, where the heck did that kick come from? I'm shooting perfect bullet holes. That's because their window of tune is set up like this. And just shooting in an elevated position is creating a variance in their shot process, and it's putting them outside this window. And they're getting kicks. And so we're always trying to set ourselves up right here in the middle of this window of tune.
There are very few guys that can mesmerize me the way you do. And made me kind of just sit here like a little girl saying, tell me more. I love it.
What are you thinking about?
The shameless plug I want to give you is for the stinking hip quiver. That's like the most dope thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So here's what I can promise you. As soon as I hang up this phone, I am going to be ordering the course that's on sale, and I'm going to be ordering a hip quiver.
Ooh, baby.
Almost like those are just two promises. Mark me down. Because the hip quiver is just like, as I started looking at that, I'm like, dude, this is such a brilliant idea.
Oh, you're talking the pocket quiver or the hip quiver? The alpha or the delta?
The snap
one.
the
delta.
One
the
snaps.
delta pocket quiver. Yeah, this thing.
Yeah.
This guy.
Show that. This thing is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, it's super cool. So what I wanted to do, how shameless can I be?
As shameless as you want, dude. Because that thing's stinking dope.
All right. So I struggled with I have the Alpha Pack, which is this is our flagship quiver, right? It's a bow hunting pack, and it's a bomb proof quiver. Super awesome. Tons of capacity. I hunt with mine. I actually designed it to be a minimalist drop leg hunting pack that goes on your hip at the truck, and it doesn't come off your hip until you're back at the truck. Like all your essentials are right on your string side. This whole premise of like carrying a backpack in and hanging it behind you, and you're like doing these giant gross movements to get into your pack is just like unacceptable for me. So I wanted to design a pack that stayed on your hip through the life cycle of your hunt. All your essentials, you can drop your tree stand, go on a stalk, you can do anything. And all your stuff is right here. Your rangefinder, everything's super purposely designed, all the pockets and stuff. But there's an issue. Look at all these bows behind me. We just talked about how awesome our 3D ranges are. I always am just running out like between meetings and going, I just want to shoot 20 arrows real quick, a couple quivers full. It's just such a hassle, especially if I'm not wearing jeans or whatever. Like I'm just putting this heavy thing on just to go shoot a few arrows. So I wanted to solve the backyard shooting problem. And so over a couple years of development and testing with some of the greatest archers, I came up with this. So essentially this is a pocket quiver. So there's a heavy duty dual magnet design here. And what this does is this slides down into any pocket. This back part like this slides down into your back pocket, your front pocket, your cargo pocket on these technical like First Light pants. They love the cargo pockets. You could slide it down into a backpack pocket like your water bottle, and that magnet holds it in place wherever you need it. It has in the inside, it has just some decent storage and whatnot in there. Perfect for tools, all that good stuff. But the really cool thing about this is the magnet pulls double duty. So whenever you're if this had a field tip on it, whenever you slide it down into this quiver section here, it's not going to slide down nicely without a tip on it. But when this slides down into the quiver section like this, that magnet that's on the inside grabs the arrow. And so then your arrows are held in upside down. And so that works really nicely if you're using like steel tips or mid-grade stainless steel tips that have a little carbon in it. This magnet is like no joke. It's super heavy duty magnets. So it actually holds the arrows down in there. And then
how many arrows can it hold?
It can hold a lot, man. I mean, I got
74?
Not 74.
Never mind, I'm not buying one.
But basically you can line up these arrows. Like I use like 0.166 diameter arrows for target archery and stuff. I mean, you could fit a dozen in there straight across there. No problem. Now the magnet that's down centralized in the middle is really going to grab those middle 5 or 6 in the other side. But the magnet like was a happy accident because the magnet the first iteration was up here in the middle. And we got our first couple prototypes of this, and I started sliding my arrows down, and they wouldn't go all the way down in. They were just getting caught by the magnet halfway down this quiver feature. And I'm like, oh, man, we need to make some new prototypes. We need to move that magnet down. And then it dawned on me, like, that could be a feature. Like in software, you say, that's not a bug, it's a feature. So we moved the magnet down to the very bottom, and now it's awesome because those tips get grabbed by that magnet, and away they go.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
That's on my order list for the day.
Where this really shines is if you're wearing gym shorts. You just pop this open.
That's exactly what I thought of.
And you just stick this thing right in your gym shorts like that. So now you just shooting with your gym shorts.
That's super cool, man.
So this will be your daily driver. You'll just leave it loaded up with 5 or 6 arrows. It'll lay next to your bow. People actually open this up and straddle the riser of their bow. So this thing just like holds onto your bow. You can store it anywhere, and then you're going to go run out and shoot. Just slap this into your gym shorts, your back pocket, your front pocket, shoot your arrows, and come on back in.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely I'm gonna order one of those today.
Sweet.
Guys, I know it's been a longer episode, but it's also been an incredibly informative episode, and I'm super appreciative of what the Push does. What I appreciate guys who give high level information, and it's exactly the reason why is because what you said is, you know what, when you started this, there wasn't that, like you didn't have that. And for me, that was me with compounds. Like you didn't have your Joel Turners, your John Dudleys, you didn't have these guys to go and teach you how to execute a shot. And so what you had was a bunch of dudes who drew it back and they trigger punched. And now decades later, it's like, okay, well, let's relearn everything I've done for decades. Like, and so I appreciate guys who put out high level content to say, let's just avoid all this frustration. Let's avoid all the frustration of trying to figure out how to tune a bow, all the frustration trying to figure out how to execute a shot. Like, we're just going to teach it to you. I appreciate that immensely. And so keep doing what you're doing, man. Because you give people resources that are incredibly valuable. And I can't tell you how many people I have sent I don't even remember what it's called now. Like the high level 101.
Oh yeah. The original film.
Like to everyone, as well as the Tom Clum's like intro to executing a good shot.
Yep.
Like that, high level, like, here's how you stand, here's how you hold the bow. Like, I've sent that to so many people, and I'm like, hey, here's a really good starting point. Yep. Like, don't get frustrated. Like, just start here.
Yep, that's perfect, dude.
And so I appreciate guys like that who put out that type of information. And I'm incredibly excited to dive into the tuning course and learn all of that.
Yeah, I think you'll really
just
like
grow in that.
It's cool.
So, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This was a blast, dude. I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Well, I need to do it a little better, but I'm trying. Guys, if you like to build arrows or work on your bows at home, you have to know about a little website called papertuner.com. I have a little studio here, a little space here where I work on all my bows. And big paper tuners just used to take up all the space. You couldn't hang them anywhere nice and neat. They took up a lot of floor space. And then I come across papertuner.com. What you get from papertuner.com is an all-in-one solution to paper tune your bows. They come with all the magnetic strings, all the clips you need. You can hang it up in a matter of seconds, take it down in a matter of seconds, hang it on the wall. It is a phenomenal way to paper tune your bows. However, they also have incredible arrow spinners. They have arrow stands. If you don't have a place to hang your paper tuner, they even make tripod mounts so you can mount it on just a regular old tripod. Guys, papertuner.com is a phenomenal solution for little shops that just don't have a lot of space for a big old paper tuner. Guys, go check them out, papertuner.com. I promise you'll be glad you did. If you are a traditional archer, then you are probably familiar with Three Rivers Archery. If you are an aspiring traditional archer, you've probably heard of Three Rivers Archery. And if you are even curious about traditional archery or hope to do it one day, you need to become familiar with Three Rivers Archery. Why? Because Three Rivers Archery is a wealth of knowledge on all things traditional archery. You can call those guys up, whether you're going to buy from them or not, and ask them any question under the sun, and they'll be able to help you. From spining of arrows to weights of broadheads to string links to AMO links, any question in between, tuning a bow, they are there to help you. They also sell everything you could ever dream of needing when being a traditional archer, from bows and arrows, broadheads, tabs, gloves, strings, stringers, cases, display racks. If it has to do with traditional archery, Three Rivers has it, and they know about the product. So you can call them and ask them any kind of question, and they're there to help you. They are the single largest distributor of all things traditional archery. They offer same-day shipping. They are phenomenal. Guys, if you are a traditional archer or you've ever even wanted to look in traditional archery, Three Rivers Archery is your place to go for all things traditional archery. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week and keep the dusty side up.